Let's start with the biggie.
Yeah.
And that is through your work, through the work you're doing in supporting clients. What are you seeing or hearing are the biggest challenges they're feeling right now in terms of what's making it really hard or what's making it most challenging to engage employees?
Well, I think, so there are a few things, right? So one for sure is there's this whole concept of what does it really mean to engage employees, right? What does it really mean? And I think some companies have just become too formalized about it, right? So they do this annual kind of survey and people give answers and they discuss it for months and then
Sure.
they do something, and I don't know, it just seems very procedural, right? And so are people really engaged? Probably not. I also think that what we see in the work that we do is really ill-equipped managers. Mm-hmm. Just they're not unintelligent. It's not that they couldn't do a better job. It's that we haven't really done a great job of setting them up for success. What we've done instead is said, you've done this job really well. You now can manage the team. We want to see everybody on your team now do exactly what you were doing when you were just, the great employee in the department. Good luck.
Yeah.
And when your employees don't rise to the occasion, you're a terrible manager.
Yeah, you're the problem then.
Correct.
Right.
And so engagement now for that employee that got promoted is in the toilet. And then you've got employees who are in that department who have had no direction now, who have had no support. They're not feeling it, right? So it's a lose-lose all the way around. And then senior executives pound the table and say, everything's wrong, what's going on here? We're spending all this money on surveys, we're spending all this money on ping pong tables or whatever they think engagement is supposed to look like, and the ROI on that is negligible.
So what have you seen then in terms of how clients are addressing that? Like, what's been the most inspiring story or case study that you've seen in fixing that?
I think one thing that might be a surprise is the concept of learning. I think that when we take seriously the fact that our employees want to get better, truly they do. It's relative as to how they want to get better, but it's job related. When we engage them in sort of a learning management capacity, where are you? Where do we want you to be? How do we get you there? Provide that path, provide the resources, the support. That's a great engagement strategy, because you're building a team of folks who learn to learn.
Sure.
Right? And critical thought is so in need in our workplaces, and we do very little to support critical thought. We want people to just do and not think, honestly.
Right.
And then when they don't think, we're angry that they didn't think in certain situations. Well, you don't ask them to think.
Right.
All of a sudden they should know at this particular situation, you should have thought there. Why? How would they know that?
Right.
So if you can come up with an appropriate learning strategy for teams, departments, for the entire organization, that they embrace that value, you'll see engagement numbers spike the way that they should and stay at that level. The cyclical nature of it changes. And I think in today's market, we have to be wise about the way in which we transfer knowledge, the way in which we influence training opportunities to happen in our organizations, for some of it out there kind of educational opportunities, things that we would never think about getting people connected to, having them take time from their day to go online to take a class about X that maybe is really more about soft skills training that isn't so directed, and we think that might be a waste of time in some organizations. It's not.
Does making that shift, it sounds like some of that is structural, some of it's policy, some of it is technology in implementation, but it sounds like it's also, what I heard underneath that though is there's also a mindset shift around moving the organization. Like you said, I think learning to learn or learning to be learners. Any insights into, like, how do you start down that journey?
Yeah. So what I think is really important there, you listed technology and process, and absolutely there's a piece of that in all of what I'm saying, but I'd also say there's that relational component. And so managers, supervisors, all the way up through executives have to figure out how to be relational with people again. And one of the things that I see making a bit of a resurgence, I wouldn't say it's overwhelming, but a bit of a resurgence, being an older gentleman in human resources, I remember when, a couple decades ago, the big thing was skip level interviews, right? Where you would have a senior executive not go through the manager, but talk to the line level employee, and have that rapport and relationship with someone, not to just filtered through that intermediary. That's happening a bit more. There are these, and it's not as formalized. A daily 5, weekly 15, whatever it might be, where an executive is grabbing someone and having this kind of conversation. And that rapport development is then modeled for the managers as well. Right. This is how we believe in checking in with our people. This is how we believe conversations should go, where the conversation should take us. It can't be, Jason, how's it going? Great. Tell me the one thing that's been really difficult about work, okay? Tell me the one thing that's really been great about work. Great. Well, this has been really good for me. Thanks for filling me in on some of that. I feel really good. Well, it can't just be one-sided, right?
Right.
It's got to have some sort of teeth back to the employee who is being vulnerable, who's risking to share, who is engaged in this rapport development. It's a two-way street, and then we can model that for those that need to do it as well.
Absolutely. So when you, just to kind of maybe get into some practical, so just sort of some practical thinking about, if I'm an HR leader or an HR manager in an organization, and I'm charged with figuring out how can we move forward in terms of starting to improve engagement.
Yep.
Like we have so the executives know they want more engagement. They're not sure why, but they know I've got the support to do something. Where do you advise that HR leader to start? Like, how do they start that journey? Yeah,
that's a really good question, because I think part of this has to do with the culture of the organization, and specifically in that question, what is the culture around human resources? Is human resources seen as a supporter of people? And by doing so, therefore, supporting the culture, right? Maintaining the integrity around who we're supposed to be. Or is human resources really seen as the yes and no department, right? Rules, regulations. Because I sit with honestly very well-meaning HR managers, directors like you're describing, who, when we start to have this kind of discussion, will say, I love that. I think we need to do that. It's a great idea. If we just can get past the PTO issue, if we just can, redecorate the lunchroom, because they're asking for, a Coke machine as well as a Pepsi machine. That is going to take care of. And I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes when you're in the throes of what you're hearing day to day, like a lot of HR people find themselves, they become responsive and reactive 92% of their day. That's what they do. This, practically speaking, this requires a mindset shift first. I will not spend 92% of my day being reactive. I will have to spend probably 60% of my day being reactive. Because the phone rings, somebody walks in, I cannot help it. But I will maintain the integrity of, and start small, 25% of my day, so that I can engage in these proactive areas that will serve me long term, rather than just continuing to come in each day and say, gosh, I hope I can get to this. And you've had the same proactive to-do list for a year, 2 years, 4 years, I don't know, however long you've had it. And you do all this stuff, and we have to get out of that cycle.
Yep.
The notebook has to move on,
Yep.
right? It's not the new app and how it's going to. If you don't make the deliberate time, it will not happen. And you can't be apologetic about it. Someone comes to the door and says, I think my deductions are wrong on my paycheck. Okay, I get that's a real deal. I
Yeah.
get you. What are we talking about in deductions? 12 cents? $15? Honestly, I'll take 20 bucks out of my pocket. Here, this is my promise that we're going to solve this. But for right now, hold this 20 bucks because I don't want you to be missing anything you might need right now. Go do that. We will set up a time tomorrow to be specific about that. Right now, I'm in the throes of developing this learning plan, whatever it might be that we're talking about. You have to protect it that strictly.
Right. That's really great perspective and great advice. Because if they're not doing it, nobody is, right? If they're not doing that work, nobody is. So, I'm going to hand you a magic wand. Hand you a magic wand, and with that magic wand, you have the ability to eradicate one management behavior, mindset, practice, fad, some part of what we call management today. And you're going to eradicate it out of existence. What do you choose?
I mean, there are a lot of things, I have to tell you. I should say this. So I have 3 kids. My oldest, on his senior trip, he's in college now, but when he was on his senior trip, they would go to Disney and Universal. And he bought me a wand from Harry Potter's world.
Nice.
And my staff know when I'm on the phone, on my headset, walking around my office, and I have the wand in my hand, which I do, it's because I'm wishing for some sort of change on the other end of the line, right? And so I'm casting a spell. And so if my staff turn and because my door is always open, not open door policy, it just is always open, right? And they turn and they see the wand in the hand, they turn right around and go somewhere else, right? Because they don't want to get caught in that crossfire. And I would say a lot of it, if I could really wave the wand as you've described it, it has to be the minutia. We swim in so much minutia at organizations, and we have made the minutia into something much more major than it was ever intended to be. Counting hours of PTO. Right. I mean, it's software. Stick it in there and be done with it. To argue with someone for 3 days about, I think I have 17.75, not 17.25, right, is half a day worth the 3 days of back and forth of emails and stuff. I'm not saying give everybody what they want. My point is, though, it's done. No, you have 17.25. I appreciate you being upset. It's done. It's done, right? So I'd want to wave the wand over just how much we get caught in the weeds with stuff. And because all we can see is the weeds, we make the weeds flourish. Right?
Feed them.
We feed it like crazy, and then we hate ourselves for it. Right. And that self-loathing in our work, especially if we're supposed to be the people who are driving a different perspective on culture and engagement and really the life behind the organization. If we are stuck in the weeds, so is everybody else. So is everybody else.
If you had one tip or piece of advice that you could give a manager. So it's a manager sitting on the other side of this computer screen, and it's like, and that manager sitting there like, man, I need to lift the engagement in my team next week.
Yes.
Right, tomorrow, next week. What one thing would you tell them?
It is honestly the mantra for my life. Set others up for success. Sit down. If you have a team, look at the work that each of the team members are supposed to be doing. Know their job. What will it take for them to do their job even better? How are you the resource? How can you get the support to them that they need? And make it happen. Don't make excuses happen. Make it happen. If you have to, I think about teachers who had to go and buy their own school supplies because there weren't any more coming into their classroom. Make it happen. Make it happen. You set people up for success and they know that you have their back doing that. Watch engagement. Watch it.